The political philosopher Hannah Arendt, one of the greatest thinkers about authoritarianism, once observed that the political left always goes to motive, always argues that its opponents are not just wrong, but evil. Remember that, it's important. We keep being told that the Kavanaugh confirmation process has further intensified America's political polarization, for which blame lies on both sides. As I said last week, I can't stand partisanship and hope to help build a cross-party movement behind the ideas of positive populism. But right now, at this moment, one party stands in the way of that with its extremism, hate and rage. No, it is not both sides. It is one side. You've never heard a Republican leader talk about Democrats like this.
He has been racist, he's been sexist, he's been Islamophobic, he has been anti-LGBTQ. I mean, there's a long list. I don't think it's useful to say, oh, we figured it out, this is what he is. He has a view of America that is incredibly constricted. And he talks to that America. He talks to them all the time. And it's by no means a majority, as we know, but it is a very hardcore who are responding to him and supporting him.
That America, honestly. You've never seen a Republican senator say anything like this.
Please, get up in the face of some Congress people.
And when exactly did a Republican representative ever do this?
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
These daily scenes of mayhem and violence, how many of those hate-filled faces are conservatives, do you think? No, it is not both sides. It is one side. It is one side that started this cycle of hate. And no, it was not Mitch McConnell blocking Merrick Garland. Here's the senator who first stated that no Supreme Court justice should be appointed in a presidential election year.
President Bush should consider following the practice of a majority of his predecessors and not name a nominee until after the November election is completed.
Here's the senator who ended the 60-vote filibuster rule that promoted bipartisanship on judicial appointments.
To change the rules regarding presidential nominees will apply equally to both parties. When Republicans are in power, these changes will apply to them just as well. That, Mr. President, is simple fairness.
Simple fairness. And here's the senator who threw out centuries of bipartisan advise and consent tradition and vowed to block a Supreme Court nominee within hours of his announcement, before a single second of testimony, before a single case had been reviewed.
I will oppose him with everything I've got.
And now, who's escalating the arms race of hate? Last time I looked, this man was a Democratic presidential candidate, not a Republican.
I believe that our party, the Democratic Party, must be a party that fights fire with fire. When they go low, I say, we hit harder.
Sure enough, the left are now saying that Justice Kavanaugh must be impeached or the Supreme Court packed. We'll have more on that later in the show, because he's too political. But I don't remember conservatives calling for the impeachment of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg over this, quote, I can't imagine what this place would be. I can't imagine what the country would be with Donald Trump as our president, said the justice. For the country, it could be 4 years. For the court, it could be, I don't even want to contemplate that. Now it's time for us to move to New Zealand. And it's not that supposed authoritarian, that great underminer of democratic norms, Donald Trump, calling for packing of the court. It's the Democrats. Yes, we're in polarized times, but no, it is not both sides. Conservative academics, however much they disagree with liberals, simply don't talk like this left-wing professor at Georgetown University. Quote, look at this chorus of entitled white men justifying a serial rapist's arrogated entitlement. All of them deserve miserable deaths, while feminists laugh as they take their last gasps. Bonus, we castrate their corpses and feed them to swine. Yes? By the way, that's not even remarkable anymore. Remember Kathy Griffin? Remember Snoop Dogg? And now, a new low as the loony left drags the Democratic Party inexorably into the gutter. Senator Susan Collins, who over 21 years in the Senate has sponsored 28 bills on sexual violence, who has been an outspoken champion for women's rights, who even as she voted on Brett Kavanaugh spoke powerfully about her hope that the confirmation process would lead to more justice for sexual assault victims. This decent, sincere and thoughtful woman, an absolute credit to our politics, was described by the Women's March as a rape apologist. The Women's March is not a fringe organization. It's endorsed by countless Democratic members of Congress. They own that. When President Trump allowed the populist movement to be tainted by the neo-Nazis of Charlottesville, I spoke out against it on this network, on this show. So where are you, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, and all the other self-righteous, sanctimonious charlatans and hypocrites who constantly lecture the rest of us about bigotry and xenophobia? Will you speak out against this hate? If you don't condemn it, you're part of it. Of course they won't condemn it, because hate is the left's currency. Hate is their energy. Hate is their path to power. Just as Hannah Arendt said, xenophobia means suspicion and hatred of people who are different. It is the very definition of the modern Democratic Party. Their brand is hate, and if they win, it will get worse. November is coming, they chanted on the steps of the Supreme Court. Yes, it is. So let's use it to show these divisive, destructive Democrats that extremism, hate and rage will not win in America. Let me know what you think of that at Steve Hilton X and at NextRevFNC. What do we think of that?
Well, I think President Trump has this unique gift where he pushes people to a point where they unmask themselves and they show who they really are. And I think we saw that with the left. There is no low enough for the left, that they were perfectly willing to destroy an innocent man in the name of politics or political retribution for Merrick Garland, or in the name of abortion, or whatever else it is. And there was no low enough. And we know that they weaponized these baseless allegations. We know that Senate Democrats went out and tried to find accusers, like Ronan Farrow said about his New Yorker piece, which, mind you, even after interviewing something like 70 people, not a single person came forward to corroborate Deborah Ramirez's story. Yet the left ran with it. And it didn't matter to them. I think President Trump so succinctly said this the other day when he said, you don't give a match to an arsonist and you don't give power to a left-wing angry mob. And I think Americans are sitting back right now after witnessing this process and realizing how dangerous the left truly is.
Well, and here's the important part. We as conservatives always try to appeal to the better angels of Democrats. Oh, we probably have a lot to agree on. We just have a different way to get there.
Yes, I've tried to do that a lot.
We're done with that. I'm telling you right now, we're done with that. These people do not want what's best for this country. They want power. They want this president impeached and put in prison. I'm sick and tired of saying that Democrats want what's best for America. They don't. They don't believe in the America of free speech, of free markets, of dialogue and agree to disagree. They want power, and they want to destroy anyone that disagrees with them. That is not a liberal value. That is a leftist value. There's a distinction there, and we as the decent-minded people have to keep the moral high ground and not give them an inch on it.
Well, and I think the moral high ground is in fact fighting back. But let's remember, the party itself has been what's been pushed so far to the left, abandoning the average Democrat, the average classical liberal. And so this is what I would submit, that in fact you're correct. There is no real division. There's not two sides doing this. But I contend that the country itself is not divided. That you had 200 people fight, out in front of the Supreme Court, that is not a mass movement. And as we're looking at this shocked, so are women who might be Democrats, who maybe are now identifying as independents, looking at that thinking, well, this is not a real alternative to what's going on. And besides, things are going well. Who are these people? And they're represented, and their main leadership. There is no one in leadership in the Democratic Party saying forcefully, this is unacceptable, because they've lost control of that dynamic. I would also suggest that the polls that we see, we know the enthusiasm gap's risen for Republicans.
it would be a mistake to suggest that the Democrats are responding positively to what this is. And so I tell my radio audience, and I would tell everyone watching this, have faith in your neighbor. You are not the only one who thinks this, and don't think that your neighbor is the enemy or not having the same reaction. I think they are.
I think that's a great summary. Thank you all.